Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by
Welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. I'm your host, John Ross, here with my co-host, Lisa Schollmeyer, and you're watching the best place to get information related to aging in place, avoiding nursing home care, protecting your assets, all of the kinds of issues that people are concerned about as they get older. That's what this program is all about. It's providing you that information so that you can figure out how to navigate this maze that we call aging. That's what we do, and that's what we provide here on the show, and it's what we do professionally as elder law attorneys. That's our job, is to help guide people through that. And so we want to make sure and make sure you know how to do it. We provide that information right here on this program, and then also through our radio show. And hopefully the idea is that you get a vision of how you're going to make it through all of this. And sometimes we talk about some crazy topics.
Sometimes.
You know, so often people, when they think about getting older, they think about things like nursing home care and
retirement,
wills and trusts and powers of attorney, and they might think about their assets. They might think about homes and cars and IRAs and things like that. But there are other assets out there.
There sure are. And you know, John, to a lot of our seniors, one of the most important pieces of property that they own, they don't even think of as property.
No, probably think of it more like a member of the family.
Member of the family, that's right. And what we're going to talk about today is your pets. You know, for a lot of our seniors, you know, the pets, they provide just wonderful companionship. They provide entertainment. They provide something to talk about. You know, it's just having a pet with you is just, it's just one of those great things about being alive.
Well, and there's been lots of studies recently that pet ownership increases longevity. You live longer, you live healthier. So lots of benefits to owning a pet. But the reason the way we're gonna kind of start off this topic is by telling you about a case that kind of arose here in the last few months, because it brings up some interesting issues related to estate planning and pets.
And pets, yes.
Yeah, so, you know, we're starting off with this story about a woman and her dog, and they lived up in the Illinois area, I think around Aurora. And her dog is Bella, and Bella is a big German Shepherd dog. By all reports, a nice dog to its owner, not so nice a dog to everybody else. Kind of German Shepherds are often very protective of their owners, and they don't get along with other people. So when the owner she's a little bit later in life, and she's thinking, well, what is going to happen to Bella when I die? And you know, what's going to happen to her, and what are my options? And well, she decides to go out and make a will, and in the will she includes a provision for Bella. Now, you could think that this could go several different ways, but what she ended up putting in the will was that upon her death, if Bella was still alive, she wants Bella euthanized, cremated, and Bella's ashes combined with her own ashes and all buried together. So essentially what she wrote in her will was that she wants her dog to be killed and cremated and buried with her. Now, the reason we know about all of this is because that owner died and Bella still alive.
That's right. You know,
at the time of her death.
Yeah, so this owner did pass away, and the executor started executing the will document and the plans that
Probably not what you think about when you say executing the will.
no, but started taking care of the deceased business. Well, one of the items of business had to do with Bella. So the executor, before the executor took Bella to the veterinarian to have her euthanized, she didn't feel right about that particular provision of the will. But as a legally appointed executor, you have a legal obligation to perform each and every term of the will. So we're in a catch-22 situation. The executor did not want to put Bella down, but legally, by following the terms of the will, she had to put Bella down. So the executor sought the opinion of a court. So what the executor did is filed for what we call a declaratory judgment action, asking the court, please tell me what I have to do. I don't want to put this dog down, but here's the will. I don't know exactly what to do, so court, you tell me what to do. And the court looked at the situation and decided that Bella should not be euthanized and cremated per the terms of the will, because they did find a shelter that was willing to take Bella, even though she did show aggression toward other people. And so in that situation, the last wishes of the testator were not carried out.
Yeah, and so this brings up several different interesting parts of the law. And the first relates to what an animal is from a legal perspective. When we think about our dogs and cats and that sort of thing, a lot of times we have a tendency to humanize them. We talk about their personalities and their little quirks. And
they have their favorite toys. We buy them gifts.
That's right. I've had people who eat dinner with them, and the animal sits at the table with the rest of the family. So lots of different things like that. But from a legal perspective, animals are property.
Yeah, just like your couch, just like your vehicle, just like money in the bank. An animal is simply a piece of property.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting thing, because we might put a lot of personal value on the animal. When people might say, well, there's no amount of money that I would give to sell, Fluffy.
Yeah.
But from a legal standpoint, this is a piece of property, and its value is whatever the fair market value of a used dog or cat is.
Right.
Which a lot of times is not very much.
Especially if it's spoiled rotten and nobody else would want to care for it the way you do. But so that's what we have to start off with, is under the law, an animal is a piece of property. And so let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the different ways we can deal with our animal property when we come back. So stick around.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Welcome back, everyone, to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer, and I'm here with John Ross, and we are elder law attorneys. And part of our job is to help people to make plans for their property if they become disabled or at their death. And today we're talking about probably my favorite type of property, which is your companion animals, your dog or cat or their pig. Well,
Parrot,
that's right.
horse,
We do have a couple friends with pigs
yeah.
that are companion animals. But so we've talked about that those animals are in fact considered property. And we also discussed the case of Bella, whose owner wanted the dog euthanized at the time of her death. And John, that sounds a little different, but I don't know that it's really a completely unique, extraordinary request.
No, we've had our own clients who have asked that very similar provisions be put in their own estate planning because, for whatever reason, they don't feel like their animal either would be cared for the way they would want or could be cared for in the way that they want. And so sometimes the owner feels that the most humane action is euthanization, which could be. And depending on the circumstances, that might be right. There are some animals that you just can't do anything with, While this court that we talked about had a problem with this pretty German Shepherd, I bet they wouldn't have had a similar problem had it been a poisonous snake.
Right, or a 19-year-old toothless cat. You just not a cat dog thing, I promise. But
right, but yeah, that's the kind of the point is that one of the things the court looked at in this case was that this was this type of bequest. They said that might be considered against public policy.
Right.
So, when they say that sort of thing, you have a lot of freedom when it comes to making out a will and the type of stuff you want to put in there. But there are some limitations that the courts have put over the years, and they've said that there's some things that you just can't put in the will.
Right. For instance, you can't put in a will that you'll leave $10,000 to your nephew if he converts to a certain religion. That's considered against public policy. So, you can't leave money to someone if they will divorce or if they will marry. So, these very basic things we say are against public policy, but otherwise you can pretty much do what you want. And so, I don't know, John, that a Texas or Arkansas court has ever spoken to the issue on whether or not it's appropriate bequest or will provision to euthanize an animal. So
right.
Until they speak on it, then I'm assuming that's...
Yeah. Now, one thing that I know they have spoke on, because I've been involved in these cases, is the opposite, where it's not that they want the animal euthanized, but they actually want the animal cared for.
Right.
And so maybe like in one case that I had, the woman had left a will that said that she was going to leave $50,000 to her next door neighbor for the care of her Cocker Spaniel, Sophie.
Right. So here is someone who has planned for their pet's future after they are deceased and has left money and has named a person who is to receive that money and hopes that they use the money for the care of the Cocker Spaniel.
Yeah. But, she did all of this in a will.
Right. And
there's problems with wills. There's problems with wills in general, but animals issues kind of bring out some of the biggest ones. Like, for example, so she says she wants, or at least she indicates that she wants her neighbors to care for the dog in the will, but there's a period of time between her death
right.
and when that will becomes effective.
And that's one thing we always have to point out to people is that a will only becomes valid at the time it is taken to the courthouse and the proper procedures are followed and a judge takes a look at the will and a hearing is held and the judge signs an order that deems the will is valid and admits the will to probate. Well, that's a lot of things that have to happen between the time someone passes away until the time a judge is looking at that will and saying it's a valid will. But in the case of an animal has to be fed that day,
That's right.
the next day following the owner's death, and things need to be addressed with that animal. So the will isn't really a great.
That time delay can
Yeah.
cause problems. The other thing about wills and this, whether you're talking about pets or whether you're talking about any situation, is that words can start having some funky meanings out there. Like, for example, in this case, she says, I leave $50,000 to my next door neighbor for the care of my dog Sophie. Well, this is what's called a condition subsequent, meaning that she has made the gift but then added a condition onto it. So I give you $50,000 and I want you to help take that money to care for my dog. Well, when you do when you word it like that from a legal standpoint, after the part about you give the money, the rest of it just doesn't matter anymore. So, for example, if I said, I leave you my house and I want you to paint it. Well, I've left you my house. Whether you paint it or not doesn't matter. So like in this case, she left the $50,000 for the care of the dog, but because the way the wording was, the next door neighbor really had no legal obligation to care for the dog. They just didn't have to. They could have, and they did, and they were very nice people. That wasn't the problem. But legally speaking, they didn't have to. So if you're concerned about making your dog be cared for, there's a big difference between saying, I leave $50,000 for the care of my dog versus I want you to care for my dog, and if you do, I'll give you $50,000.
Right, yes, very big difference.
You know, that's flipping it. That's saying you do the act and then you get the money, as opposed to you get the money and then you can do the act, because that second one, once you give them the money, it's over.
Yeah. So, but you know, this is a big concern for seniors. You know, not only the care of their animals if they have to leave their homes for extended period of time because of health situations, or of course at death, many folks want their animals cared for, and you know, caring for an animal can be expensive, and so you know, a lot of people live on fixed incomes. A lot of seniors and their friends don't have the additional resources to care for an animal. So, you know, providing and thinking about what you want to happen with that animal at your death is certainly a wise thing to do. And so we've addressed, you know, one solution is to have the animal euthanized, which is kind of a drastic way to go.
Certainly.
The other thing we often see is some inexact planning where they kind of have do some handshake deals.
They've got an idea of what they want, but the execution of that idea falls because, you know, law is technical. Yeah. And if you don't get the technicalities right, then what you meant just doesn't happen. So what are the good solutions out there? That's really kind of that's kind of the question. So yeah, we've talked about all the bad things. What are the good ideas? Well, if you want to hear the good ideas, you're going to have to stick around after one more.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, Our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer here with John Ross, and today we're talking about planning for pets. Who, John, when I talk to a lot of seniors in the community, they love to talk about their pets. And
sometimes before more than their children.
That's where I was going.
Right.
Pets don't ask for money. Pets don't move home. So there are a lot of good feelings with the pets.
Absolutely.
And so they're an important piece of property to make plans for. And so we've talked about a couple of plans that can be made for pets that maybe aren't the best way to go about it. So. But John, I want to plan for my pet, but I don't want to haul down to my lawyer's office and have to pay thousands of dollars or some big fancy estate plan for my Dachshund, for my weenie dog. So help me out.
Well, yeah, I mean that's certainly certainly one thing is nobody wants to spend or most people don't want to spend a lot of money on this sort of thing, but if you're looking to plan for that animal and you really want to do it right, you got to think about a couple of things. Like, for example, who's going to be taking care of the animal, and so in that sense, naming some care providers, having something in writing that says, here's who I want to take care of the dog. But caring for that dog or cat or pig or horse or whatever it is can get expensive. So you also are going to need to set aside some funds. And that's where it starts getting a little bit trickier. And here's where a little bit of planning can go a long way. It's one thing if you've got somebody that will take the dog or cat and will take care of it for free, no problems. If we're talking about just leaving it to one of your kids who's going to look after the dog if you're gone, that's not going to be a problem. Or a next door neighbor or some friend at the animal shelter or something that is going to do fine. But if you're talking about leaving that animal and leaving some funds aside, that's where something like a pet trust.
Yes, a pet trust. And it sounds scary and involved, but actually
it's really not.
It's really not.
Yeah, so several years ago, the laws were amended to allow, back when trusts were originally created, the whole idea behind a trust was that it was for a living beneficiary. And so the beneficiary of a trust had to be a human. So you had to have a human being as a beneficiary for a trust, and if you didn't have a human being, then the trust would fail. So for example, I couldn't create a trust for the benefit of my house. Well, kind of like we talked about in the beginning, an animal is property, just like a house. And since I couldn't create a trust for my house, I couldn't create a trust for my dog. But they changed those laws.
That's right. So, I think we've got about 45 states now that have changed their laws to allow trusts to be created for animals. And these pet trusts, as they're called, are very simple legal trusts that, a pet owner, it's not too complicated. The pet owner can create this, couple of page trust, whatever. We don't have to write down every single legal term of this trust because the state law has implied a lot of the provisions that are part of a pet trust, so they aren't quite as long or complicated as maybe trusts are that you are setting up for maybe grandchildren or a disabled person. But so these pet trusts are implied under the law as long as we say a few magic words in our estate planning and our trust planning before we pass.
That's right. So having this this animal trust created, set up where you can do this, because the other thing is, unlike a will, trusts don't go through probate.
That's right. They come they are in existence, or they spring into existence right then.
Right, so they can be a pretty good way of making sure that there's an immediate access to funds, because you will have named somebody as a trustee over that trust, somebody who can immediately step in, have access to the funds, can make sure that that animal is being fed, and these sort of things. So animal trust, pretty simple to do. Probably going to need a little bit of advice on how to do it, but not bad. And a lot of times, in many communities, there are attorneys associated with animal shelters who oftentimes will do this sort of thing pro bono or for a very reduced fee. So depending on where you live and things like that, you might even be able to get legal assistance to help set up something like a pet trust for little or no cost.
Well, and the other reason that a pet trust is a great idea is that way, if you do want to leave funds behind to care for that animal, if the trust has already been formed, then you can name that trust as maybe a partial beneficiary on a bank account, or a partial beneficiary on a life insurance policy, to where some funds come from your other assets that are set aside for that animal.
That's right. And if you are a senior with an animal, the other thing, we're talking about what happens at death, but, just making sure that there's somebody around that knows that if you're injured, if you're in the hospital, that somebody can get over there and feed that cat, next door neighbor or somebody. You might even have something in your wallet that says, hey, I've got an animal at my home, and if I'm in the hospital, somebody needs to feed that dog.
Yeah.
So look out for those animals. They are legally property. But
so much more.
But we all know there's so much more, and so and of course that's what we're here to talk about is give you things to think about that maybe you hadn't thought about before, and you probably thought about making a will, but maybe you never thought about planning for that pet. So now you have, and of course if you've got more questions that you need answers to, you can always call in to our live radio show, which is on 98.5 FM every Saturday at noon. You can call in there and you can pick up a copy of our Aging Insight magazine, which has got a lot of other information. Otherwise, stick around right here, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by